Hello, you're back on the Ruslan Belov channel. We continue analyzing the situation on the front and move on to the map. So friends, the past 24 hours have been even better in terms of the pace of advancement than the previous day. And the previous day was already good. The Russian army took control of more than 20 square kilometers in a single day. Additionally, 2 settlements came under control. So let's not waste time and get started. We'll begin with the Sumy region, where yesterday there was an advance of more than 2 kilometers in the pocket between the villages of Alexeyevka and Unikovka. Moreover, it wasn't just a movement across open fields. The village of Vorochino was captured and brought under control. Now the only remaining issue in this pocket is the village of Novonikolaevka, where Ukrainian forces continue to hold on and offer stubborn resistance. But now, with the fall of Vorochino, they find themselves in operational encirclement, practically on the brink of full encirclement. All the roads are already under our control, and the AFU can't retreat along them. The only option is to retreat south across the fields. But as you can see, this pocket is tiny, just 2 kilometers across. That's 1 kilometer on each side. In fact, this entire space is within machine gun range, if firing from both sides, not to mention drone coverage. How they plan to retreat, or if they can at all, I honestly don't know. If even 1 out of 10 manages to escape, that would be lucky. In reality, I doubt it. Most likely, they'll all be wiped out. The total area of advancement just in the Sumy region over the past day was 6 square kilometers. This is especially amusing considering that just 2 days ago, Ukrainian channels were enthusiastically reporting that, attention, they had managed to stop our advance in the Sumy region, that the Russian army was stuck, not moving anymore, and they were preparing to launch a counterattack. Well, one has to ask, how's that going? Yes, they did bring in reinforcements, I mentioned that. But what kind of reinforcements are we talking about? Territorial defense units and 18-year-olds. Just 5 minutes ago, I posted a video in my Telegram channel. Footage from the helmet cam of a dead AFU soldier. It shows how they were brought in on an armored personnel carrier to the task location. And you know where that was? In this forest strip west of Yablonevka. They arrived, dismounted, but our guys were waiting for them. All 11 Ukrainian soldiers were killed. All of them between the ages of 18 and 24. And the helmet cam shows them getting out, and immediately coming under heavy fire, falling one by one. Anyway, I posted the video in my Telegram, check the link in the description to watch. What else is there to say about the Sumy region? Not much more for now, at least until we reach and secure the line from Kotin to Krapovshchina. Not just reach it, but take full control. Plus, there needs to be progress further south. Here lie the hills that offer a direct view of Sumy city. Until that line is taken, no major breakthroughs or strategically significant developments should be expected. For now, we'll continue advancing 2 to 3 kilometers at a time, but nothing grand for the moment. Now let's turn to where there have been some changes, and not the most favorable ones for us, in the Kursk region near the village of Tyotkino. Over the past day, the AFU managed to make some minor gains and expand their zone of control. And I always strive to be objective. If the AFU makes any advances, I report them. It's just that such instances are rare, so I don't often have a reason to talk about them. But near Tyotkino, there were indeed some developments in the past day. I'll now tell you about them in detail and show the map. As I mentioned earlier, and even recorded an entire video dedicated to the Tyotkino situation, if you haven't seen it, check it out. There has been no breakthrough by the AFU into Tyotkino or its center, and no encirclement of our 2 companies either. What has been happening are daily attempts by the AFU to infiltrate and establish a foothold. And if they manage that, they try to expand their control. They're constantly throwing more troops into the area. A week ago, they managed to take control of a forested area. They had been gathering there, even under bombardment. But the situation in Tyotkino isn't great. Our guys have been in an operational encirclement for over a month. Not because of mistakes, it's just the geography. This part of the Kursk region juts into Sumy, and from the beginning, Ukrainian forces were already positioned on 3 sides. So our guys have been in a position where enemy drones strike their logistics from 3 directions. in that operational encirclement in Tyotkino for over a month now. They've been holding and defending their positions, but they don't have enough strength to push back on neighboring sectors. So the AFU retained control of that forest area and expanded their zone northeastward in the last 24 hours, specifically in this rectangle along the border. Their advance was about 800 meters deep and 1.5 kilometers wide. This didn't introduce any new threat to Tyotkino itself. The AFU is still a couple of kilometers away from the village. But as you can see, there's the village of Zarya, another small border settlement on the Volf River. And from current AFU positions, it's only 850 meters away. 2 forest belts, and they're in the village. Technically, Zarya was already 800 meters from the border, so nothing has changed drastically. But the risk of the AFU pushing through those forests toward the village has certainly increased. The total area they captured yesterday was about 1.2 square kilometers. Tiny, of course, compared to what our army has taken, but still unpleasant. We'll keep monitoring the situation closely. Now let's talk about our own advances. In addition to the Sumy region, which we've already covered, progress was also made in the Kharkiv region. You can see the red-colored area. Here, we advanced 2.5 kilometers and captured the village of Krasnoye Pervoy. Interestingly, yesterday, the Ukrainian military administration announced mandatory evacuation in 7 more settlements in the Kharkiv region, precisely in response to our advances. What's next here? Most likely we'll be working to straighten the front line in 2 directions, toward Figolovka, or rather Petro-Ivanovka, and toward Kamenka, in order to eventually move on Kolodezhnoye. There won't be any rapid progress here, as this direction is not even secondary, but more like tertiary. However, even with such limited forces, as you can see, they occasionally manage to advance by 2 to 2.5 kilometers. Moving on. Over the past day, there was a slight expansion of the control zone in the Toretsk area. Just yesterday, we discussed a 1-kilometer advance from the reservoir here. And in the last 24 hours, they managed to expand the section by another 400 meters, advancing toward the T05016 highway. It's all fairly straightforward. The goal is to gain a foothold along the road and continue advancing along it. But the most significant progress took place in the Pokrovsky direction. Take a look. They managed to advance 4.5 kilometers at once and straighten the front line between Novonikolaivka and Kotlyarivka by clearing out these fields. And as you can see, as a result of this advance, Novonikolaivka is now completely blocked from the south. If we enable the grey zone overlay on this map, here it is, about 85 to 90% of the village, according to this American-made map, is considered to be in the grey zone. That's a very large grey zone, wouldn't you agree? The AFU are holding only on the outskirts, so I believe we'll soon hear that the village has come under our control. Additionally, with this push, we've also come very close to the village of Muravka. We're now less than 1 kilometer away from it. Overall, summing up the past 24 hours, 2 settlements came under control and 23.3 square kilometers were secured. Given that the AFU took control of 1.2 square kilometers, subtracting that gives a net gain for the Russian army of 22 square kilometers in the past day. A steady daily pace of over 20 square kilometers has been maintained for more than a month now, since the beginning of May. This is certainly encouraging. Now, a few words on the political situation. Recent events in major US cities clearly show that the protests against President Trump's immigration policy are not spontaneous street unrest. It's a coordinated operation, simultaneous flare-ups in Los Angeles, New York, and Minneapolis, where Democratic governors are in charge, featuring attacks on law enforcement, road blockages, and destruction of urban infrastructure. It points to a targeted scenario aimed at undermining the legitimate executive power. The globalist playbook is being followed to the letter. Government countermeasures against protesters are being discredited, and their actions are branded as so-called peaceful protests. California's governor plays a key role in this, openly sabotaging federal efforts. His attempt to block the deployment of the National Guard in Los Angeles and his statement condemning harsh measures by the White House are not mere political disagreements, but an open rebellion against the president. U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth announced the deployment of U.S. Marines to Los Angeles to restore order. The Pentagon is also mobilizing an additional 2,000 National Guard troops. Protests against immigration raids have already spread to New York and Dallas. As a result, the total military force in Los Angeles now numbers nearly 5,000 personnel. Interestingly, stacks of brand new bricks are mysteriously appearing on the streets of Los Angeles. The unrest in California's main city is only escalating, and, as usual in such cases, riots and other related destructive acts have already begun. Zelensky continues to bet on escalating the military conflict, regularly provoking Moscow with drone strikes in hopes of prompting a harsh response and drawing the West into the conflict. But in Washington, Bankova's efforts, Zelensky's office, are not receiving support, quite the opposite. Republican Senator Tommy Tuberville, a Trump ally, stated bluntly that the Ukrainian president is trying to drag NATO into a full-scale war with Russia because he knows Ukraine can't survive without the alliance's involvement. According to Tuberville, Zelensky is losing on the battlefield and is therefore desperately widening the conflict to pull in as many players as possible. He didn't stop at strategy criticism. He called Zelensky a dictator, accused him of creating serious problems for the US, and reminded the public of the disappearance of billions of dollars in aid sent to Ukraine. That money vanished without a trace, and American taxpayers, as Tuberville put it, were given no guarantees of transparency or accountability. These statements came amid Ukrainian strikes on Russian airfields, which caused concern among other Trump allies. Former Trump advisers Steve Bannon and Michael Flynn, as well as former Ukraine envoy Kurt Kalach, publicly warned that such actions risk a sharp escalation and could undermine the entire architecture of Western support for Kyiv. The US will reduce funds for supplying Ukraine in the 2026 budget, said the Secretary of Defense. There is a reduction in this budget, he confirmed during a House Appropriations Committee hearing in response to a question about the Pentagon's procurement budget for supplying Ukraine with new weapons in fiscal year 2026. Will they cut but continue supplying, or is it a full budget cut equivalent to what was previously spent? As they say in Odessa, that's a big difference, commented Oleg Tsarev. Russia-US talks will take place in Moscow. Deputy Foreign Minister Dmitry Bykov's information about continued Russian-American contacts was confirmed by Russia's ambassador to the US, Alexander Darchev. According to him, Russia and the US have made a preliminary decision to move negotiations on diplomatic irritants from Istanbul to their capitals. I can confirm that the next round of delegation talks will be held very soon in Moscow, Darchev said. In other words, the dialogue between Moscow and Washington is progressing on its own trajectory and is not tied to the outcome of Ukraine conflict negotiations. Now to a completely different topic. A tandem that could have been the most powerful in American history suddenly appears to be collapsing, perhaps already has. Donald Trump and Elon Musk have had a major falling out. How did it start? Last Thursday, Trump threatened to terminate government contracts with Elon Musk's companies, including SpaceX. He made this statement on his social media platform, Truth Social. The easiest way to save billions in our budget is to end government subsidies and contracts for Elon. The conflict between Trump and Musk, once an ally who led the Department of Government Efficiency, escalated on June 5th after a public spat on social media. The argument started when Musk criticized a Trump-supported spending bill, and it quickly spiraled into threats over federal contracts and accusations involving Trump's alleged ties to Jeffrey Epstein. The world is now searching for the real reasons. It would be naive to believe that even such loud and emotional public outbursts are sufficient grounds for breaking ties between figures of this magnitude. After all, successful political collaboration can exist without personal affection. Business comes first, and Trump and Musk, first and foremost, are businessmen and fully understand this. So it's obvious that the key details of the quarrel remain behind closed doors, while the public only sees speculations. Nonetheless, we must deal with the likely consequences. One thing is clear: by attacking Musk, Trump has alienated a significant portion of the American elite that helped him win the election. Regarding Trump's bold statement about Elon Musk's companies, we should remember that the NASA-SpaceX partnership is one of the most important public-private projects in modern space exploration. Since 2015, SpaceX has secured over $13 billion in NASA contracts. making it a key private partner for the agency. It's surprising that Western Ukrainian media haven't already flooded the internet with stories blaming Russia for the Trump-Musk conflict. But the day's not over yet. Still, Russia has somehow made its way into the story. Experts interviewed by Music magazine believe that cutting ties with SpaceX could make the US dependent on Russia for space launches and access to space. A deputy director at the Center for Strategic and International Studies emphasized that SpaceX is critical to US national security and NASA. If the contracts are terminated, he said, NASA may once again have to rely on Russia to transport astronauts to and from the International Space Station, ISS. SpaceX is deeply integrated into the national security infrastructure and America's space program. It's not an appendage, it's a vital organ in everything the US does in space, the CSIS expert concluded. An interesting perspective, especially considering Musk's response to Trump's insinuations. Elon Musk announced he would cease using the Dragon spacecraft. At the moment, the only alternative for ISS missions is the Russian Soyuz. What makes the space fallout of the Trump-Musk spat even more complex is the fact that Elon's father, Elon Musk, is currently in Moscow. He arrived as a guest and speaker at the Future 2050 forum, and it would be naive to assume he's here to lobby for his son. In fact, he recently urged Elon to admit defeat in the standoff with Trump. Thank you for watching. If you found this update informative, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Stay tuned for more detailed reports and analysis from the front lines and beyond. Until next time, take care and stay informed.